I have the privilege of introducing to you our first speaker, Cathy Yenca, who possesses infinite energy, who I would watch her read pages out of the phone book. I would, like, she's just that gripping, and everything she says conveys to you, this is important, and I believe it. In fact, Cathy is also speaking about a subject near and dear to me, which is education technology. I work in the Silicon Valley where the edu often gives way to the tech, where the emphasis is sometimes on the technological side and not the teaching side of it. And I love that Cathy keeps her priorities straight every time. She's a teacher's teacher and is also honored by a lot of technology companies all over the place, Apple, etc. So please join me in welcoming up Cathy Yenca.
Good evening, ShadowCon. Let's get this party started. Seeking students who hide. As a middle school math teacher, I often think about my experiences as a middle school math student. I think of classrooms arranged like this. I think of lots and lots of this. And this. Check it out, folks. Those are actual artifacts from the 1990s right there. I had those in a shoebox. But I remember feeling like this. And I didn't know where I stood, when I was really mathematically lost. And I never knew if it was just me feeling that way. I was sitting there with my perm and my braces out in the open on my island. And yet, I was hiding. As a matter of fact, with the exception of a handful of students who never seemed afraid to speak up, many of us were hiding right there in plain sight. As a teacher now, I'm guilty of perpetuating this. In my classroom, some students get heard more than others sometimes. It's like I'm looking at them through a fisheye lens, where some students who speak up all the time and volunteer all the time get magnified, and some of the other kids fade from our attention. In an article by Jennifer Gonzalez, she coins the phrase fisheye syndrome to describe this condition that we teachers, good teachers, inadvertently permit to impact our perception of students during instruction. It's that humanity in each one of us that gets excited about that handful of students who's never afraid to speak up. And we know we're doing it, but those folks are just so darn tough to resist because those kids do and say exactly what we'd hope they would. And sometimes we make assumptions that everyone is understanding what we're teaching. And these kids right here, well, they're left to do all sorts of things. Maybe they're waiting for that perfect moment to ask a question they've been wondering about, but that moment never comes. Or they just mentally check out and sit there. So ShadowCon, what can we do with this? I would venture to say step one would be to admit that every one of us is guilty of this sometimes. And maybe we're guilty to differing degrees. Permit me to share a bit about my journey in seeking students who hide. And maybe these phases will resonate with you too. Phase one, indifferent. I've been a student in classrooms like this. That teacher's gonna teach, and it's up to the kids to figure it all out. And there's really no need for student input along the way. Frankly, I feel like this was me quite a bit of the time when I was student teaching. So much emphasis on the teaching that I forgot there were humans out there. The emphasis was on me, creating ideal conditions for students to hide. I even remember my cooperating teacher asking me once, "So, are you ever gonna give them a quiz?" It honestly hadn't occurred to me. Now that was me as a pre-service teacher, but pre-service teachers to veterans in this room, I wonder how many of us get stuck here sometimes through denial, oblivion, or even personal choice. Phase 2, insulted. Ever feel disappointed about the results of an assessment? But I taught it so well. Why did they make so many mistakes? Or how about this? During instruction, a student suddenly asks a question that reveals just how much they don't yet know. Yeah. Avoiding this pain during instruction is easy, though, because we can just call on the kids that we know are going to get it right. But here during this insulted phase, we're not indifferent anymore. We know there are kids trying to hide. And if we let our disappointment show when we call on a kid and they don't get it just right, those kids that were apt to hide are just going to sink deeper into the woods. Until I started assessing students informally and often, I spent a bit of time here at this phase. Phase 3, inspired. Our students are always going to ask those facepalm questions. But it's the shift in teacher mindset that makes the difference between choosing to be insulted and being inspired. There's a great example of this on the teaching channel. Have you seen the video, My Favorite No? Okay, if you haven't, you have to watch this video. The teacher models a strategy where just simply using index cards to get a work sample from every kid and choosing one student's incorrect mathematical work as her favorite, she uses that as kind of a springboard for classroom discussion. So using student work as inspiration is really important, right or wrong. When we use our students' thinking, right or wrong, as the inspiration, we can make our students want to share. And let's make sure every one of them gets heard and feels safe being heard. You know, between all three of these phases, it's easy to kind of dance around between them. But maybe they shouldn't be ranked or numbered. Maybe this isn't a linear progression at all. As a matter of fact, if I'm being brutally honest, I can embody all three of these even within one class period. I might have even done it yesterday before coming here. So how can we aim to be inspired a bit more? How can we dip our toe into the water, gaining some insight from our students, and see, have more of them been hiding than we'd like to admit to ourselves? And when we look at that information and face that reality, what will we do with it? I've come to terms that I don't think as a human being I'm ever going to completely overcome the fisheye. But pedagogy paired with tools that can empower every student's voice in our classrooms can sure help. What helps? Ask everybody. Pose a question and let every kid weigh in. Anonymize their responses so that the focus stays on the math and no one hides. For example, this was just a simple warm-up I did a couple weeks ago. I asked students, pretend these are your quiz scores, and do you think the mean is a good measure of center? I just let everyone weigh in with an opinion, and here's what happened. Pretty interesting, right? Split straight down the middle. There's no island here. Everyone in the room knew where they stood, and that not everyone in the room agreed. So, of course, we want to know, why do you think this? Giving every student the opportunity to provide a justification for their thinking, again, empowers every single one of them. Looking closer, you can see we didn't agree in the room. And maybe you can imagine the kinds of discussions and arguments that happen because we used real-time student thinking, especially when there's an outlier in there. So we had a lot of good discussions about measures of center. Include everybody. Give every student an opportunity to work a problem and virtually send each one to the board. Feature all students' responses, correct and incorrect, and look for trends. Anonymizing helps too. Everyone feels safe. Giving everyone an opportunity to show a work sample and feature them in real time gives us a chance to take a look at mistakes kids are making. And then we talk about how we can help a friend who needs some help. I call this the safety net experience. It's something that we do that's not graded, and it gives everyone a chance to kind of work out their mathematical thinking when they're not quite there yet. Not only did I learn by looking at just a quick, take a picture of a problem we're working, that we needed some help identifying bases and heights here, but my students can also articulate that need. And eventually, someone quotes Joe Bowler. This quote is on the wall in my classroom. It's kind of become a daily occurrence. Because when we include those students who hide and give every one of them a voice, it can change our class culture. Make insulting moments inspiring. So, what do you notice about these results? Yeah, this happened. This was after a quick check. Students had done a problem-solving task, and you're probably wondering, what's the deal with number 6? Well, here was the problem. Students had to just simply interpret an inequality, and that didn't happen. But they needed help from me. This isn't a time to scold them. They needed some direction. Do you think showing these results to students had an impact on them? Again, no one's on an island. They needed some help from me, and we were able to move forward. Can you imagine what would have happened if I didn't ask? But I'm not the only teacher in my classroom. Having students create videos, writing scripts, and working together to showcase what they know gives every student an opportunity to be a teacher and gives me direct access to their thinking and their peers.
So now you combine like terms.
No, now you add 21 to both sides.
Oh yeah.
Two gentlemen coordinated this video. I don't know if you could tell from the audio, but one was on his phone. So it's kind of cool. They had coordinated the script. It was really cute. Letting students create projects and products that not only show their mathematical thinking, but their creativity and empowering their voices. That's something that is awesome and gives you a chance to hear straight from their mouths, their thinking.
The way I see the figure growing is I see the head of the music note growing by 3 squares each time, and the stem of the music note growing by 2 squares each time.
So many tools have a really awesome teacher dashboard where we can see what's happening in real time. But I'm a firm believer in showing this feedback to students when appropriate as well. We can celebrate when someone excels and give them an opportunity to work with another student who might be struggling. And what happens is every single student is put smack in the middle of a math conversation, and now everyone's talking math, everyone's getting help. And when we showcase all of our progress, everyone is empowered. There's a couple things I've noticed about kids in my time teaching them. 2 things are pretty important to middle schoolers. They care about what their peers think, and they compare what they think to what their peers think. If we can leverage these traits to help gain a deeper understanding of mathematics, that's a win. Making student thinking something that we can look at and talk about safely, there's instant buy-in there. They really do care. So here's my call to action to not just you, but to me too. We're all in this together. On Monday, will you notice your fisheye tendencies? The hardest part of this is admitting that this is something that we all do, but acknowledging it is the first step. Secondly, use a strategy that empowers all students, especially the ones who have been hiding. Whether you simply use index cards or a technology tool, try something new and get those kids to talk and communicate and participate. And finally, as Dan mentioned, we're running an online course. It would be my honor if you would join us there so that we can share about ways to empower every student voice in your classroom. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with y'all, and I can't wait to continue learning with you. Thanks.